Get ready for chills and thrills at Hometown Haunts and Hops Horror Convention here in Plymouth, Massachusetts. Join us for a spine-tingling day of horror-filled fun on October 28th at the Mayflower Brewing Company. Meet horror actor Matthew G. Taylor from Resident Evil and dive into a macabre world of cinema and literature. Sip on chilling brews, indulge in ghastly treats, and immerse yourself in a haunted atmosphere. Whether you're a horror buff or just seeking an unforgettable experience, Hometown Haunts and Hops has it all. Don't miss out on the eerie excitement. Secure your tickets now by heading on over to Inebri-art.com. Go to our events calendar, and in October you will find the link for Hometown Haunts and Hops, which is sponsored by HalloweenNewEngland.com. HalloweenNewEngland.com is the website for the truly Halloween obsessed, with the most extensive guides to New England haunted houses, ghost tours, classic horror film screenings, jack-o'-lantern festivals, haunted hayrides, and more. They've got all the thrills covered throughout September and October, with over 2,500 Halloween events on their events calendar and hundreds of local Halloween attractions. It's the only place you'll find everything from haunted history tours and costume contests to which haunts are open on Thursday nights. HalloweenNewEngland.com has your Halloween covered and is sponsoring Hometown Haunts and Hops this year. And welcome back, Inebri-art. This is Andy, your host, as always. And today's guest came via fan of the show. So a listener turned out to be it was your daughter who's in college, correct?
Correct, yeah.
So
down in New Orleans,
Nice. We're with D Elliot Woods, actor, voice actor, hand model, commercial, a little bit of everything.
Yeah, writer, yeah.
So I didn't even get your daughter's name. Where's your daughter's name?
Oh, Sydney.
Sydney, thanks for listening. I hope you don't not listen to your dad's episode. That would be rude.
Well, this is the only way I'm ever going to make it to the level of being cool. I might make it now, finally. You never know. It's
so funny how, like, when I first started podcasting, my kids are like, "Oh, I listen to your podcast. Now we're like 360 episodes in. I'm like, "Oh, did you hear the new episode?" They're like, no. You're like, thanks, man. Thanks a lot.
No, thanks for having me, man. This is beautiful.
Yeah. So you have a new audiobook. And for us dyslexic people, I love that because I'm not a big reader, but it's called Rise of the Unicorn. Just give us a quick rundown. Like what is, like, how did you come up with, and, you know, can give us a rundown on what the idea is? How'd you come up with the idea? Like, give us just a little bit of backstory on it.
Okay. Well, let's see. One, it's a suspense thriller. And I am a big fan, obviously, of movies, major fan. And but I also, because of my little nerdish qualities, my mind latches on to oddball facts. And there are some things in this story. And the primary reason that I wrote it, in all honesty, is that for dramas that I write, there's usually a message or there's a reason. And in my case, for this story, one thing that I really hate in my personal life is bullies and or people who use the court system to abuse other people, who maybe don't have enough money to, fight the battles, so on and so forth. And so that was really what was at the root of the story and how I came up with it. I literally was sitting in a bank, waiting on my loan officer and all this kind of stuff. And I was looking around and I said, oh, wow, a bank is a great metaphor for this message that's in this story. And I thought, well, I wonder if, what could I do to make this seem like a realistic robbery? So I literally sat there looked around at their camera system, looked at how the bank was set up and everything else, and I came up with what I thought was a plausible way to rob or to attempt to rob the bank. And so that's really where it started. But the story itself is about a guy by the name of Lieutenant Gus Martin. He's a police negotiator in Los Angeles, and he thinks he's coming to a routine negotiation situation because there's an attempted bank robbery that ends up failing, and the people that robbed the bank tried to come up with, not tried to come up with, they end up with something like 30, 35 hostages, and they bring Gus in. But in the middle of this negotiation, trying to get the people out, he realizes that he's actually the target of the people attempting to rob the bank. So they're using his past against him, and they force him to do a basically global television interview and answering their questions. And if he doesn't tell the truth, they know, and they end up killing people one by one. So it's a pretty interesting journey. Nobody yet has seen the twists coming, which is kind of a compliment. And it's most similar to, I would say, Inside Man, The Usual Suspects, and Die Hard. So if you
It's
like,
so funny. I was thinking of the Die Hard movie when you were talking about how like they had an ulterior motive, and
yeah,
it's such
yeah,
a classic, um, great heist movie. I love the fact that like you were in line at the bank and just kind of daydreaming. I do that stuff all. I'm not a writer, but I come up with like ideas and like I'll jot them down. But it's I don't know, it's something about like never. I'm pretty sure I've talked about it before, but like never giving up that kind of like play aspect when you're a kid, like when
yeah.
you're a creative person, like,
Yeah.
you had imaginary friends, you may not act it out like you would when you're a little kid, but there's those times when you're just in like a store or bank, or your mind just starts wandering and kind of creating this, you know.
Yeah, you end up coming with a story, and then you bounce it off a couple of people to see if is this even plausible, and they're like, yeah, are you a bank robber, dude? What's your problem? So
Is this admitting something like?
yeah, exactly. So it's like I hope nothing happens in my neighborhood anytime soon, because you know who they're gonna come after.
Yeah,
So
that's funny.
yeah, but it's doing really well, and I was frankly surprised because with little publicity, it made it to, I think, up to number 12 on Amazon's bestsellers list. And it's like, okay,
Oh
I'll take
wow,
it.
that's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So, hopefully we can keep it running. So,
So
and the goal is to turn it into a movie,
yeah.
because what ended up happening is I actually started off to write. I've probably got 3 books going right now that I've been trying to finish for Lord knows how long. And I got almost 3/4 of the way through this one. And I thought, I should go ahead and write the script now. So I wrote the script, started shopping the script. And because of some of the notes that I was getting, I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to wait on these guys to, say that this is a good story. I will finish the book, put it out there, and then I'll come back around with a stronger IP. So here we are.
Yeah, I mean, it just gives you a better like bargaining position, really, if it succeeded as a book.
I mean, where art meets commerce, man. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Is this your first foray into the whole writing a book and wanting to try and convert to a
Well,
script?
it's the first book that I've done, but I've actually written, let's see, I think 3 movies that, not counting this one, that are being shopped around, and a couple of TV shows, comedies that
Yeah.
have been run up the flagpole over at CBS. Well, I don't know if I was supposed to say that, but nobody's written a big check yet.
You didn't say what one,
Yeah.
so that could be
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah. Do you prefer writing something serious or comedy? I always feel like writing comedy is so much harder because I feel like people tend to write what they think is funny, not necessarily what's funny to a broader audience. And so a lot of times,
Oh, I never
still
thought of it that way.
Like I've had
I,
friends who've written like comedic comic books, and like if you don't work in their particular store with their four guys that they know, you're like, I don't get why this is funny.
yeah, this isn't funny at all.
Yeah.
Why is this guy standing here every day in the
Yeah.
same spot? No, actually, it comes out pretty evenly for me because I'm, kind of naturally a happy, silly person. So the comedy comes easy, and the drama can be harder, but I know it's the truth when I can actually feel it. Does that make
Hmm.
sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because, coming from an acting background, when you see dialogue and you're reading it either out loud or inside your head, you can feel it when it's true. And that's how I know when the drama's right. But the comedy is kind of comes naturally.
Yeah. Just like a lot of people, I came up with new hobbies during COVID, and I started writing one of the stories that I had in script format. And there was just one of the characters that I'm just like, I don't really know how to voice that character, and so I understand. Like the other ones, I felt very natural. Like, okay, like I get not just their motivations, but like their personality, and it just kind of came easily. But there's this one who I just can't. I'm like, it sounds like movie dialogue opposed to just like a normal person talking.
Like conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Any tips?
Uh, yeah, honestly, just, really, okay, if I have an audition,
Mhm.
of course, to try to memorize the lines, this, that, and the other. But every now and then, when something doesn't feel right, I will go to the bathroom mirror. I swear to God,
Yeah,
I'll go to the bathroom mirror, say the lines. And if I believe what that guy that I'm looking at says, then I know I'm in the pocket.
yeah.
Um, Maybe, basically, if you take a buddy out for beers, um, just talk to him about your story, but turn your phone on, and you're going to come across with a way to because you'll forget about the phone recording, and
Hmm.
you'll just talk to your buddy, and I'll bet you the dialogue fixes itself.
Interesting. I like that idea. I'll have to give that a try.
Mhm. Yeah, but
Um,
a lot of beer helps.
hey, we're Inebri-art. Inebri comes before
Yeah,
art,
exactly, man.
So you were talking about going for auditions. I almost said interviews, but you've been in a ton of stuff. You are quite the prolific actor. Um,
Thank
I,
you.
I couldn't find a recent Star Trek that you weren't in, and you're in one of my favorite Star Trek shows, The Orville.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I okay, well, first off, I'm 6'4", so there's that. And that comes into play when they're looking for people to play, aliens
Mm-hmm.
or, people that might be some type of a physical threat. But it was funny. I auditioned for a particular casting director for what was she casting at the time? It was one of the lawyer shows, really popular lawyer shows, and I could never get the gig. But then they brought me into for Star Trek for what was my first one? You remember Deep Space Nine?
Of course, yeah.
Okay, I ended up booking the role on there, and it's the only show I've ever been killed on.
Oh, really?
I ended up doing scenes with Tony Todd and who plays Kern
Hmm.
in that, and then of course Michael Dorn, who was Worf, and I also was a Klingon officer, and those two end up killing me by the end of the show. But because of how well that went, they started bringing me into other parts of the Star Trek universe, and I didn't die anymore. I
Yeah.
even got to be a human in one of the movies, but a lot of the scenes were cut because of a height disparity between myself and Patrick Stewart. But the only thing that's frustrating about that kind of stuff is, dude, you knew I was 6'4" when you
When you
brought
cast
me
me,
in.
yeah, yeah,
So now you're gonna be mad at me for being taller than somebody that
yeah.
anyway. But that's Hollywood. That's
Uh,
Hollywood.
so is it because where you keep getting brought back into the same, series of movies? I always say, because my kids are getting older and I'm trying to like pass on some information. I'm always like, if you make a mistake, don't pass the buck, own up for it. Just be like, yep, my bad, won't happen again.
Yeah.
and be easy to work with. Like, don't create more work for the people working with you. Like, is that the kind of thing that gets you brought back again and again, being kind of like easy to
Um,
work with, or like,
there's easy to work with. You know your lines and you hit your marks. Um, but yeah, I hadn't really thought of that before. But yeah, because that was actually the first group of producers that started bringing me in for roles that I didn't even audition for. I started getting, just direct offers. And then other offices, I'm still, trying to get the first job. So I still have to audition over there. But yeah, I think it is all about, just knowing your stuff, hitting your marks, and, being relatively cool to work with, or at least if there is an issue, you handle it in a way that's professional,
yeah.
as opposed to that's it and start flipping tables and acting an ass.
I'll be in my trailer.
Exactly. Or, I told you people I did not like seeds on my strawberries. And it's just like,
Yeah.
oh, really? Because you'd be surprised at the people that do that. Um, but they get away with it maybe because of, their stature. But at some point, everybody faces the other side of the mountain. And it's like, okay, you planted a lot of bad seeds there, sir.
Yeah, yeah. And
You
it's one
know,
of those, just after a certain amount of time, like, people just have had it and they're like, no, I'm not.
I'm good.
Yeah, I can find other
Yeah, I'm
people.
good. Yeah, yeah. But no, that's really good advice that you give to the kids. I think, anyway, that's the same kind of stuff I tell mine.
Yeah.
When they listen.
Yeah, I mean, most of the time they just roll their eyes, and
Hmm.
like, my youngest is like, bro, and I'm like, don't, dad, like, call me dad, not bro.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's not until you're 32 can you call
Yeah,
me bro.
yeah.
Yeah,
Um, but it's fun because, like, they're up there now, and my youngest is really trying to get into like a creative field, and so it's really, I find it very exciting to kind of like watch them take
become.
on, yeah, become like a person, and
Yeah, yeah.
are your kids like going into creative fields, or?
I don't want to jinx it, but I think one is definitely going to end up there, and there's another one that may.
Yeah,
Well, I'll just say it. Sydney May, that's my oldest. My son is 16, and I'm surprised that he's taken, not drama courses, but like video production and things like that. And I'm like, oh, look at you go. And I don't say anything, but
yeah.
I see him. And then my youngest, who knows? Because she's only 10.
Oh yeah, 10, they still want to
Yeah,
be, a ballerina astronaut.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah, man.
So do you prefer acting or writing, or do you find them scratching a similar itch? Like
The acting thing is fun, and it really depends on the project that I'm in. Like, doing comedies, I love it just because it's fun and it's something that people watch, I think, to, just make them forget, their problems, at least for that half hour or however long, the comedy is on for. So it serves a useful purpose. The dramas, I enjoy when it's a good drama. There
yeah,
have been some that I've been in that are kind of like, well, all right, this is where they're going to play the violin, and yes, so I got to hold this look,
yeah,
but it's not really great. That's a little harder to deal with. But man, when it's got a nice message, I love that. But that's okay from the acting standpoint. But I'm actually getting to a place now where I'm enjoying writing because it's actually coming from me as
hmm,
opposed to me fitting into somebody else's puzzle. Does that make sense?
yeah, for sure. Do
Yeah.
you like, because I very much like working in a collaborative type of thing, um, regardless of what I'm working on, because I feel like almost I'll never create something as good as I can with someone else, because they'll, even if I love an idea, they'll be like, "Ooh, add this little cherry on top," and you'll be like, "Oh, I never even thought of the cherry on top. That
Yeah.
sells it. That's so great."
Yeah.
Even just like kind of passing along, that script, or whatever, to someone else and be like, just read this and tell me what you think. But you have to need that right person who's going to be like, this is dog crap. Like, what are you
Right,
doing? You know,
right,
like,
right. Yeah, that's going to absolutely tell you the truth. You have to have a good circle of people that you can trust for that. And like you said, when they say, well, you might want to consider, having this character do, don't eat the donut there.
yeah,
Save the donut for later because it's a great metaphor. And you're like, oh, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
But what's really cool is that after all of that is done, and then you bring the actors in, and then they're starting to do stuff with your material that you didn't even see. It's mind blowing because it's like, oh shit, I'm a pretty great writer actually, but it's like, and you had no idea that was even going to happen. That part is pretty fun.
yeah. Like I watch it. There's a YouTube show called New Rock Stars, and they do like a lot of deep dives in like nerd movies and nerd TV shows, and they're always like, they're using this color as a metaphor for this coming up, blah blah blah. And you always wonder, I'm like, are they?
Are they though? Are
Yeah,
they?
or did
Yeah.
they just like that looks cool? Let's do that.
Yeah. The bird just happened to fly by. Maybe that's what happened. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I sometimes it's like, what's that uh Sigmund Freud, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar, kind of, sometimes
Yep.
stop reading into it. Sometimes it's
Yeah. Sometimes it's not all those things, but thanks for giving it a try. We appreciate that. Yeah.
so since your audiobook has a twist, uh how do you go about foreshadowing it? Are you trying to foreshadow it without giving like the automatic twist that jumps to my mind is Sixth Sense, and I had some friends be like, "Oh, I
That's
knew he was dead
perfect.
the whole time," and other I'm like, "Bullshit, you did!" Like,
Yeah, exactly. Maybe after you watched it 3 times,
yeah,
you did. But no, what I did, at least in this instance, is we've all seen the thriller suspense things, and you've seen the negotiators, going through these uh, dramatic twists and turns, but you kind of been there before, and you kind of know what's going to happen, a lot of times. So what I did is intentionally, I start the book off with a scene that he's finishing up a negotiation. Somebody's got a gun at somebody's head, that whole thing. But it's the same thing that everybody has seen before. So I started off in the world that you already know. He does pretty much what you think he's going to do. But what the most important thing about that setup is that you actually get to see him in action, and he defines who he is as a person. But now you think you know what's going on. And as soon as that's over, everything else that happens is not what it seems to be. But you think it is because of how the setup happened.
I love that sort of thing, and it makes me think. I love Firefly, Josh Whedon's show.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's an episode that opens up. They like defeat some local bandits, and they're at this little celebration. And this woman walks up and hands the captain a bowl, and he drinks out of it. And then she puts a wreath on his head. And I turned to my wife at the time, and I'm like, if they're married because of that, I'm gonna be so pissed off because that's so cheap. And of course, they end up married because of that. But by the end of the episode, you're like, this is my favorite episode. I never saw any of this coming, but it's like
Any
Josh
of it
Whedon.
coming, yeah.
Yeah. He kind of like lures you in with that, like, oh, this is a trope. And then by the end of it, you're like, I
No, it
never
is
saw
not.
any of this coming.
Yeah.
So,
And what's kind of cool, at least I think, in the story, is that there's several twists and points that are made. But one of the major twists is something that I'll just say I literally put it right in front of you. And because it's right there happening in a normal, I've seen this movie 100 times setup, you don't notice it. And it's like, so you're trying to figure out what's going on. It's like, dude, I literally told you on the first page, what this is about, but you didn't see it because it was right there, just like Sixth Sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that stuff.
Yeah.
And you did all the voices for the audiobook?
No, I did all but one.
Oh, all but one. Sorry,
Yeah,
excuse me.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I want to get that out there. But yeah, I did. I'm not really an impressionist, so I really only did, I think, 10 different voices for some major characters. And what I did do, and this is the truth, is that the rest of them are in my voice. But I think most of the time, because I was conscious of their, I don't know, spirit, their history, all the same stuff you do as an actor, where you have to come up with all this backstory for this, person, so that when they speak, what they're saying makes sense and you understand why they're using the emphasis that they're using. I did that for all the characters, and I'm telling you, it almost drove me crazy. I honestly, I didn't set out to do it that way, but circumstances, came about that it was like, well, the only way this is really going to get done is if you do it. And so I started down the path. But yeah, I did 55 characters, including the narrator.
That's crazy. Like,
yeah.
Did you ever have that moment of like you're reading like one set of line or dialogue and you're like, oh, I'm doing in Susie's personality and I'm supposed to be in Jimmy's? Like, can we do that again? Because I'm, yeah.
No, I did because what I would do is I would rehearse it and I would only do it one chapter at a time. And so I, had it color coded, so I knew that if I'm talking in Bob, I got to be Bob when it's yellow and I got to be this person. Okay.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah. So I had all of that stuff going, but it was a little overwhelming at first because my original intention was to have, hire some of my actor friends. I was going to do, I think, a cast of 8 to 10 people. And I either had the studio, but everybody couldn't make it, or people could make it, but the studio wasn't available. All this stuff was going on. And, because I do commercials and voiceover stuff, I've got a small studio at my house. So I thought, okay, well, I can't have everybody over here to do it. But time's wasting. So let's go, let's do it. And so I started, and I asked a girlfriend of mine who's a really good voiceover actress to play the main female character because I just felt like that character needed her own voice and a true representation of who that person is. So I figured, okay, if I give an actor one job and they nail it, then when I'm in scenes with her, I just have to meet her energy. I won't have to think as much. And so that's how I came up with that little workaround.
Yeah. And did you record your dialogue like at the same time? Were you both reading, or did she record her dialogue separately?
Oh, no. We did it at the same time.
Yeah.
Same time. Yeah.
I think that just lends... I don't want to say that you can tell, but you can tell. Like there's just something about when that's done that there's just little things that you can kind of pick up on and go like, oh yeah, I feel like it feels more natural, Yeah,
exactly. Because you're literally, if you have to look at the book and read the words, but if you can look into somebody's eyes and have a conversation with them, it may not happen on the first read. It's like, no, that wasn't it. And then you say the same thing again, but now you don't have to look at the book as much, because you've done it a couple of times. By that third take, you feel the connection, and it's like, okay, that was the shit. I know that one was good.
Yeah, and it's like Zoom is kind of that way. I'll have people that I interview that don't put on the camera because like we don't record the video section of this, but you can tell the difference, I think, in those episodes where they're a little more disconnect. I mean, You're already on Zoom, so you're disconnected somewhat. When we started this, my whole thing was like, if it's not in person, we're not doing it. There's no way I'm going to, do any phone interviews or blah, blah, blah. And then like COVID happened. I'm like, well, okay, maybe we're going to have to make some adjustments.
We're going to do some phone interviews, and I'm okay with that. That's what the Lord intended.
Yeah, we went dark for a month while we kind of like sorted it out and figured out what we're going to do. But I mean, it's not bad. Like I'd much rather be sitting, having a beer, chit chat. But it suits its purpose,
Well, it's cool, like you said, because at least with the camera going, you may hear some words and you're not really, did he mean this or that? But I can look at the look on your face and go, oh, no, this is exactly what he meant, because he wouldn't have said that and be smiling if he meant it the other way,
Yeah. And like part of it from my end as someone who's interviewing, it's like my, I don't plan these questions. As I told you, it's just a
Yeah, yeah.
conversation. So I got to keep the ball up in the air and make it kind of interesting. And if like I see the person, constantly like checking their phone, then I'm like, all right, like I gotta kind of change this up and get this person engaged. And then that's my job. If the camera's off, I have no idea what's going on. And
Right,
you know,
right.
so that's the hard part, I think, is making it feel like a casual conversation and not an interview.
Well, it's hard, but man, when it works, and you're 300 episodes in now, so you are the veteran
Yeah,
of
I've done
doing
it a
it.
couple times.
Yeah, man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I find it hard to shut
And
off.
you've been
Like,
juggling the ball pretty well today, I'd say.
yeah, I will have a conversation with someone to come over to fix the water heater or something. You're standing behind them, just kind of. Next thing you know, you're like, am I interviewing you? Am I asking too many questions? I'm sorry, I can't shut it off. But do you find that like with your acting and your writing, are there times when you want to shut it off that like you're like, oh, I'm not a writer today, or I'm just dad or whatever.
Yeah. Well, sometimes it's not that I want to shut it off, but the dad stuff takes priority. So if somebody's got the basketball game, even though if I'm in the flow and I'm writing something or coaching somebody on an audition or doing my own audition, I gotta do that later.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting, you're talking about the COVID situation. We started doing probably 90% of the auditions that we have now are self-taped. So
Mm-hmm.
we literally have little home studios with the backdrop and lighting and everything else, and somebody off camera that's acting the other roles while you're doing your audition. That's the only time that I have to finish because I'm using other people's time and energy. But everything else, it's like, well, time to be dad. It just happens that way.
Is that self-taped interview part of what is up for debate in the actors strike?
Yes, yes,
I thought I remember hearing
because
that.
there's some people, most of the cast, and it's not the casting directors. Most of the time, it's the producers putting pressure on the casting directors, saying, "Hey, we got to find this character in a day." So you thinking, okay, hey, I think I'll, go to the mountains or go to the beach later today. So you're in that mode, and you get this email and a phone call saying, "Hey, look, you got an audition, but they need it by 4 o'clock today."
You're like, oh sure,
And you're
yeah,
like,
no problem. Yeah,
yeah, here, let me go ahead and memorize these 8 pages, and
it's
let's see how
2:30. I
that
got
goes.
plenty of time.
Yeah, and then meanwhile, this is just a random name, so this is a real case. But then after you interrupt your whole day, your whole family's day, everything else, you work, try to get this audition done. You do a pretty good job given the circumstances, and then they hire Denzel, and you're like, really? So I stood a chance on getting that? Did I?
Yeah.
So that's the part that they are negotiating because it's too much of a roller coaster, and heaven forbid that you get two other auditions the same day.
Right.
So now you got three auditions, and so you have to put them in the order that they're due, even though you may not feel like that. It gets to be too much. And so they're limiting what we're going for as a union is to limit the size of the audition, the time span that it's due, some things that just kind of common sense, because literally this production company doesn't care that you've got four other auditions. They don't. They want to see the character they want to see.
Yeah. It's that idea of, well, what I'm working on is important. And
Yeah.
you're like, yeah,
The
they're
hell with the
all
rest of your
important.
life.
Yeah.
So,
It's
that's
such a
definitely
corporate
one of the things on
mentality.
tape. Man,
Yeah.
oh, you hate, and again, it's just greed. It's just
Mm-hmm.
greed at the root of it, which I wish more people understood, but they think it's actors being greedy, and it really isn't when you look at the scale and the scheme of the overall situation. It's not.
Yeah. I think the problem with that is, Joe Average, who has no contact or behind the scenes at all of the industry, goes, the actors are on strike.
why is Dwayne the Rock Johnson on strike? He makes a ton of money. It's like, yeah, it's not
Right,
him.
exactly. How many millions does he need?
Yeah, it is police officer number 7 who's on strike.
That's the people that you see as guest stars, and and even the series regulars. That's who's on strike. But man, the what would you call them? The working actors. Like I guest star on this show, and then next week I'll be on a whole nother show in a whole different universe. People like myself and others. It's tough. It's tough.
You know the guy.
Right.
Yeah, you know the guy from that show. He's in that other show with that other person too.
Or even sometimes, I'm out and I might be having dinner with the kids or whatever, and somebody, will come over and they're like, "Excuse me, do you know my cousin Dave?" I'm like, Dave, I don't think that's where you know me from, because I don't want to be an ass and be like, actually,
I'm on.
No,
TV.
I've been in the movies. But people can't figure it out. Or the other circumstance is that's kind of weird and funny. I always enjoy this. If I'm at a mall or something, some little kid will pull their mother over towards me, and the parents are trying to figure out, well, who is he? And meanwhile, I've been on this Disney show or this Nickelodeon show, and they're like, "Oh, that's the guy."
Yep.
So that is always hilarious when you see parents that are like, "I don't know if we should do this."
Yeah. That's great. Yeah. I my only brush with fame, I just telling you, I live in Plymouth, and we have the Thanksgiving Day parade. It's a huge thing down here, parade day. And one year I brought my kids to it, and we're just hanging out, and someone's like, "Excuse me," and I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "I just wanted to say, I'm a big fan," and I'm like, "What?"
Okay. Of what?
Yeah. Who? And he's like, "I follow you online and blah blah. I just wanted to say I think what you're doing is great, and I'm gonna come to some of your events and blah." And like walked off, and I had like this most like confused look, and I turned to my kids, I'm like, "You saw that, right? That just happened. You saw that."
That's so cool. That is so cool. Well, it's good, man. You should be recognized for it, because, like I said, 300 some odd episodes. You guys have built it up. That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and it's work, man. It's
how old are your kids, if I can ask?
Oh, sure. My youngest is 19, and my son is 21, and he turned 21 back in June.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, hopefully you've written a pamphlet. I've only got one that's that far along. I've got the 20-year-old, 16, and 10.
Yeah.
So
so I'm gonna plug someone entirely else. I find some of the best life advice regarding work, and family, and relationships. Adam Savage.
Really?
From Mythbusters. He has a new, he's got a YouTube show called Tested, and I think it's like Sundays, he does like a Patreon, people write him questions, and he just does kind of a live, thing, and he'll talk about oh, this is how you bid a job, and just completely behind the scenes, totally honest, no bullshit, just this is how you bid a job. This is the pitfalls you're going to have. This is this, and da 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 da. But he'll also be because he's got twin boys and who are adults now, and he'll be like, he's like, I see myself as a shepherd, I'm I have to guide them. And then he'll talk about relationship and the work-life balance, and how him and his wife are, always since COVID became really involved in making meals in the kitchen, and kind of just some of the best, most honest life advice. And I'm like, God,
really?
he's a genius. He can blow stuff up, and he's got good relationships.
It's don't mind if I do. Hey, that's brilliant. Okay. Yeah. But I've written his name down, so I'll have to try to check him out.
Yeah, I think it's Sundays, and it usually goes up in a couple of clips that he'll do a few questions, and some of it's just celebrity stuff, being oh, what's it being on Mythbusters? But then he will frequently give you little tidbits of life advice, and I'm it's so good.
That's cool.
Yeah, and yeah, definitely anyone listen, check him out, because
all right,
he seems like a genuinely good guy, and
and I've never met him, so that which means nothing, because man, there's so many people that are visible, especially out here. You meet people you don't meet others, but you just hear stories, from other people that you know and trust, like you just telling me about him. Like, you know what? That resonated. I might check him out. Yeah.
Have you had a celebrity run-in that? Because I try not to. I'm a fanboy. Like, I grew up on Star Wars, but like, if you meet those people, you're like, hey, I like your work, and then you kind of go about your business. Have you met someone that kind of made you fanboy out a little bit? Like, what was that interaction where you're like, oh, I met Denzel or whoever, and you're just like,
it wasn't a meeting. It was. Do you remember the show Boston Legal?
I never watched it, but I knew of it. So
okay, all right. I
go in.
That? Huh?
Was Shatner on that? Am I
yes.
Okay.
Yes, he was. Okay. So this is, probably, I don't know, 15, 18 years ago, but I go in for an audition for this big guest star spot on Boston Legal, right? Mm-hmm. This is, I'm answering your question.
Yeah.
I go in for this big guest star spot. And, sometimes you go when you're doing live auditions, you don't get to redo it like you do if you're doing a self-tape. So there's a lot more pressure for you to be good that first time. Otherwise, you won't get a second time to do it.
Sure.
So I go in, I meet the casting director, and there's an assistant in there, whatever. And I ask if I have any questions. Like, no. So I do this scene. And sometimes, immediately if you suck. And then there's other times, when you hit it, it's going over the fence. It's like you just stand there.
You're watching it. Yeah. Like, damn, I'm good.
It was like, fuck, I am a brilliant actor. Yeah. So I have one of those auditions for this huge thing, and I know it's note perfect. And as soon as I'm done, the casting director looks at me and says, oh, that was brilliant. Hey, would you mind reading this other role? And I'm like, okay. And it's a smaller role. And I look at it for, I don't know, 15 minutes or whatever. And I come in and I do that audition. And it goes very well. Mm-hmm. And she's like, great meeting you, this, that, and the other. So I leave. And this was back when we had pagers. Before I even get to my car, pager's going off. It's my agent. So I call. And long story short, it's like, oh, they loved you. They want you to come back for a callback this afternoon. It's like, okay, great. So I come back. Now this time, who's in the room? David Kelly. There's 13 people in the room, and I'm coming in to do this huge guest star spot again. And the afternoon one went very, very well. But this one, a double home run, if there is such a thing. It was like, everybody's on base is coming. I kill it. And immediately she's like, you remember the other role that you read? Could you read that again? And I'm like, yeah, okay, do that. It goes well. Again, it's a smaller role. Yeah. So I do that. And again, before I get to my car, the pager's going off. They love you, this, that, and the other. But they wanted to put me in this smaller role. It was still a guest star, but it was like, well, wonder what that was about. I get on set. I'm talking to somebody that I know, and you know how you can feel the energy shift in a room? Okay, so I'm on set talking to somebody at the craft services table, and, I knew that William Shatner was on the show, and I knew, some other people, but I really didn't know the show. Man, I get called to rehearsal, and I turn the corner, and I walk into this setup where I'm standing there with, let's see, Renee Auberjonois, who's really big from the Star Trek universe.
Yep.
William Shatner, Candice Bergen, Michael J. Fox, and me.
You're like, am I on Punks?
I was like, what the fuck? I was like, so I'm trying to play it cool, but I literally had to walk away because it's like, oh, this is why they wanted me in this role, because they wanted somebody that wouldn't melt. And I'm telling you, I almost melted. But at the end of that week, the thing that was so cool, even though I was inside, I was like, oh my God. The thing that was so cool was that when, you're done doing your filming, typically the director will say, everyone, this is Elliot Woods' last day. And, they give you a little applause or whatever and you leave. But when he did it, those 4 came to me and it just made me feel like I was in the club.
Yeah.
So that was cool. And that was the closest to me fanboying out. But because I was overwhelmed when I first saw this group of people that I was in these scenes with. Yeah. And it's like, wow, okay. So long winding story, I know, but that was
that's a most great story.
Example. Yeah.
And that makes me think of like the imposter syndrome thing about like those moments where you're like, I don't belong here.
Right. This is like, I mean, everybody in here is going to the Television Hall of Fame.
Right.
Except me, at least at present, So, but it was a nice little thing that was given to me that kind of made me know, so you might be pretty good at this, and not in an arrogant way, but just like, wow, okay, I can do this.
Yeah.
So it was really very fulfilling from that standpoint.
I think those moments are always important for the next time where you're feeling a lot of place. You're like, wait, hang on. I did that other thing.
Exactly.
I got this. I'm super stressed out, but I got it.
Yeah.
So, it's those types of stories are some of my favorite things about being in a creative field where you're just like, it was bizarre and in this position, and like we've recently had this opportunity thrown at us. Like I don't know if I can't talk about it, but I'm just not gonna because I don't want to jinx it.
Right.
But it was just one of those where someone's pitching us the idea and trying to sweeten the deal. I'm like, you could have just said, "Can you?" And I'm there. Like this is a great opportunity. Like you don't sweeten the deal anymore, and it's just so weird and flattering,
Yeah. That you actually belong at the big boys table.
Yeah, exactly.
You really do.
Yeah. So it's always a pleasant experience. It's weird, but it's pleasant. So.
I think the worst thing, and I'll be brief, the worst situation I ever had was Long Island iced tea induced. I'd had 2. And I was at the club with a friend, and I don't know how I ended up in the VIP area, but there I was. And it was very crowded. I'm into these Long Island iced teas looking down at the dance floor, and there's this huge crowd of people around me. Next thing I know, the crowd kind of, pushes all to one side and almost knocks me down. And so I'm not normally this person, but literally as I, get my balance, I turn back around to face whoever it was that was causing all this pushing and shoving. And I literally say, what in the F is your problem? Now, did you hear the hesitation?
Yeah.
That hesitation was as I turned around, it was Mike Tyson. And so literally, I had just cursed out Mike Tyson, and I'm standing by a railing, and I'm like, I'm about to die.
Yeah.
But he was so totally cool, and it surprised him so much that he was like, oh man, I'm sorry, I didn't see you standing there. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Don't hit me.
Yeah. And so then we'll just leave it there then. But that was insane. But that's the kind of stuff that happens in LA. You never know who's going to be where.
Yeah, that's cool, man. This was so much fun, man. I am so glad that I stumbled across that email in my spam folder. I gotta figure out what's up with my spam
thank
filters.
You.
Yeah. Where can people go to download Rise of the Unicorn?
It's on, the book and ebook are on all the major platforms, but the exclusive place that you can go for the audiobook is actually Amazon, but it is available on, Amazon, Audible, and iTunes. So I know that those 3, but it's an arrangement specifically with Amazon, and they farmed it out to the other 2 locations.
And we can't promote any movies still, but where can people go to see what you're working on? Are you big on social media? Do you have a TikTok?
I don't have a TikTok. No, you know what? That's not true. I have a TikTok, but I've only signed on once, so I don't get it yet. Yeah. But I'll get back to it. But I've got I'm on Twitter under D Elliot, Elliot Woods, and same on Instagram. Got some other stuff going. And the only other thing I'm working on right now that I could talk about is another book. Yeah. It's an interdimensional love story called 11 Minutes and 14 Seconds.
Okay. Sounds interesting.
Yeah. The short version is that everybody knows what leap year is. Comes every 4 years. You get this extra day in the year. The reason why is because everybody thinks it takes 365 days for the Earth to go around the sun. But in reality,
a little more or a little less, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so then they give you this day every 4 years. So if you take a day, 24 hours divided by 4, that's 6 hours. However, it actually takes 365 days, 5 hours, 44 minutes, and 46 seconds. So every time they give you a leap year, you get 11 minutes and 14 seconds too much. And over time, that adds up, and it pulls you further away from the time you're supposed to be in. Yeah. So that's the fundamental issue that's being resolved.
Are you a science nerd? I feel like you're a science nerd.
I got issues, man. I told you I got issues.
Yeah, I've been following the. I keep waiting for like a good article to be written. The asteroid that was returned.
Don't know that one.
Yeah, so they sent up a satellite and basically collected a chunk of rock off of an asteroid and then brought it back. And when they opened up the container, they had there's like the container, and from my understanding, and then there's like an interior container where they expected the rock to be, and all inside of the outer container is just like covered in like this black fine powder and dust, and they're all like, we're getting so much more than we expected, and this is like some of the origins of the universe. So they're like, I'm just waiting for them to like actually run some tests and find some cool shit.
Man, at some point I'm waiting on somebody to come through the atmosphere and be like, okay, we've seen you guys fuck this up long enough.
No. Just like you're talking to a dog.
Man.
No. Drop it.
Just stop it. Exactly.
Yeah.
Man.
So.
No, but thank you so much for having me on.
This has been an absolute pleasure, man.
Yeah, man. I really appreciate you. So, all the best. And clearly this is the best episode, I'm sure, of all the ones you've ever done.
Oh, I can't even remember any of the other ones.
Oh, no. Really appreciate it, Andy.
Yeah. And when your other book's ready, man, come back on. We'll talk some more.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.
Cool. Have a good one.
All right, you too.
Bye.
And thanks for checking out the show today, listeners. If you enjoyed the content today, you can go over to patreon.com/Inebri-art to support the show. You can join over there for just a few dollars a month and help us provide this fun content that you just checked out. You can also email us at Inebri-art.com with your questions, complaints, and concerns, or you can find us on all social medias at Inebri-art or at Inebri-art6 on Instagram. And also don't forget to check out our other shows, Bar Talk Podcast, Old Colony Cast, Inebri-art, and all the other shows on the Inebri-art Network, which you can find at Inebri-art.com. So thanks again for listening.